The cabin lights were bright, almost too bright. Every glance, every emotion was laid bare beneath their glow. I stood just behind my grandfather, my hand hovering near his back in quiet support. When the woman in the floral lace dress turned toward us like a storm waiting to break, her sunglasses sat perched on her head like a crown she believed she'd earned. The metal frames caught the light as she jabbed a finger toward the window seat. Her voice sliced through the calm of first class, sharp, entitled, impossible to ignore. "This is my seat. I don't know what confusion you two have, but I booked this one. I always fly first class and I'm not moving." My grandfather, Mr. Charles, didn't respond right away. His cane tapped softly against the carpet. The boarding pass hung loosely between his fingers, tilted downward as if he wasn't sure why he needed to prove anything at all. He didn't look angry. He didn't even look offended. He just looked tired. The kind of tired that comes from years of patience, of knowing some arguments are older than time itself. I could feel the tension build in my chest. Around us, a few passengers looked up, their eyes darting between her and us, curiosity flickering like a spark before judgment inevitably took shape. Just moments earlier, everything had been peaceful. The soft hum of suitcase wheels rolled across the terminal floor. The overhead speaker called passengers to their gates. The air smelled faintly of roasted coffee. I remember adjusting the strap of my grandfather's bag across my shoulder as we walked slowly together, his steps deliberate, mine steady beside him. Matching his pace was never a burden. It was an honor. We'd booked this trip months ago, not for comfort or luxury, but because he had a medical appointment in another state. Long flights were painful for him without extra legroom. First class wasn't indulgence, it was necessity. His joints stiffened if he sat too long, and standing for extended periods was nearly impossible. That seat allowed him to travel with dignity, and that dignity meant everything to him, even if he never said it aloud. I'd noticed the woman earlier while boarding. She'd been sighing dramatically, shifting her weight like standing in line was an injustice. She kept inching forward, her impatience filling the air around her. It was clear she believed the world ran off her schedule alone. When our tickets were scanned and we stepped onto the plane, she was already leaning forward practically on our heels. Everything was calm until she saw my grandfather sit down. That's when her expression twisted, not in confusion but disbelief. It was as if his very presence in first class insulted some invisible rule she believed she enforced. She shoved her oversized purse into the overhead compartment with a loud thud, making the door rattle. Then she turned, blocking the aisle like a gatekeeper. I kept my tone even. "Ma'am, this is seat 2A. We have the boarding passes right here." She waved her hand dismissively, her voice coated in arrogance. "He doesn't need that much space. Look at him. He should sit somewhere more suitable. The front row is wasted on someone who can barely move." My grandfather's grip tightened slightly on his cane, so small a gesture no one else noticed. But I did. It was the quiet kind of hurt that had followed him for a lifetime. "Ma'am," I said again, carefully holding my voice steady, "we paid for these seats. They're assigned. This isn't about preference, it's about what's fair." She laughed, but it wasn't friendly. "Oh, please. I've flown this airline for 12 years. I know how this goes. They move people all the time, especially when older passengers need help. It makes sense for me to sit here. I have a business conference to attend. I can't be cramped in the back. I can't believe you're making this an issue." Her voice rang out sharp enough to turn heads. I could feel the cabin's attention shifting toward us. People weren't just glancing anymore. They were watching. The woman's words carried easily through the quiet first-class cabin, echoing with indignation. A nearby flight attendant, a young woman with a careful smile and uncertain eyes, approached with small, cautious steps. "Is there a problem here?" she asked politely, though her voice carried a tremor beneath the practiced calm. "Yes, there is," the woman snapped before I could respond. "These two took my seat. He should be sitting in assisted or regular seating, not up here. I have priority status with this airline and I will not be displaced." The attendant's gaze shifted toward us. "May I see your boarding passes, sir?" I handed them over without hesitation. She checked each one carefully. Her eyes softened slightly, though her training kept her tone professional. "These seats belong to them," she said quietly. The woman shook her head hard. No, I don't accept that. I want to speak to someone else." Someone who actually understands flight regulations. This is ridiculous. Her voice grew louder, slicing through the still air. The tension inside the cabin stretched tighter, like a wire ready to snap. My grandfather finally spoke, his tone calm, weary, and deeply human. "I don't want trouble," he said softly. "We just want to sit and travel like everyone else." Something in his voice silenced even the hum of the engines. It wasn't anger, it was fatigue. The kind that comes from facing the same kind of unfairness too many times to count. The woman crossed her arms. "Well, I want fairness, and I'm not giving up my seat just because he got here first. He should be somewhere more appropriate for his condition." "It's common sense," my jaw tightened. There it was again, the entitlement, the quiet cruelty disguised as logic. The belief that kindness could be replaced with status. The flight attendant hesitated, unsure how to respond. Around us, passengers sat frozen, their silence filled with quiet disapproval and discomfort. And in that moment I realized this wasn't just about a seat. It was about dignity, about respect that should never need to be defended. I looked at my grandfather. His eyes met mine, steady and calm, yet carrying a sadness that cut deeper than words. That was when I knew. I wasn't going to let anyone take his dignity away. The air in the cabin felt heavy, motionless, as if the whole plane was holding its breath. The confrontation wasn't over. It was only beginning. The flight attendant stood still for a moment, as if the ground beneath her had turned fragile. Then she nodded to herself, gathered what little confidence she could, and quietly stepped away to speak with another crew member. Sarah, the woman in the floral net dress, crossed her arms tightly across her chest. It was the posture of someone who mistook stubbornness for strength. She angled herself toward my grandfather as though her presence alone might intimidate him into surrendering the seat. My grandfather lowered himself slowly, carefully settling into the cushion with quiet grace. His cane rested lightly against his leg. Every motion was deliberate, not from fear or defeat but from preservation. His silence wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. He knew that his breath, his patience, and his energy had limits and that not every battle deserved them. Still, I saw the flicker of discomfort in his shoulders, the subtle shift in posture that revealed what he would never say out loud. He felt judged, observed, diminished. I took the seat beside him and placed his bag gently under the one in front of me. The woman remained standing in the aisle, refusing to move. She tilted her chin high, sighing loudly. This time not out of frustration but performance. "Look at this," she announced to no one in particular, yet loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is what happens when entitlement is rewarded. I'm being treated like I'm the bad person and I've done nothing wrong. I'm the one being disrespected here." Her accusation lingered in the air, not because anyone believed it, but because everyone recognized the tactic. If she said it enough times, maybe someone would start to agree. I turned to her, keeping my voice steady. "We're not doing this. You know these aren't your seats. You saw us board before you. You know your boarding pass doesn't say 2A. She blinked rapidly, not from confusion but from rage. "I travel all the time," she snapped. "I have priority status. That means if seats need to be adjusted, I get the upgrade. It's how this works. Maybe you're just new to flying." Before I could answer, she reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. With the speed of someone rehearsed, she lifted it, framing herself perfectly in the camera while keeping us in the background. Her voice shifted, trembling with fake distress. "This is what I deal with when I travel alone," she said dramatically. "People pretending they need special treatment, taking advantage of airline policies. I don't feel safe right now. I'm being verbally harassed." For a moment I could only stare at her, stunned not by the lie itself but by the precision of it. She wasn't just reacting. She was performing. Every word, every tremor in her tone was practiced. She had weaponized sympathy, but she made one fatal mistake. She believed performance was the same as truth. She thought attention meant victory. Around us, the cabin shifted. The woman across the aisle lowered her magazine halfway. A man 2 rows back leaned forward slightly. A couple near the rear exchanged quiet, knowing glances. The energy in the air changed. People were no longer just witnesses. They were seeing through her act. I leaned closer to my grandfather and whispered, "Are you okay?" He nodded once, slow and deliberate. It wasn't casual, it was composed. His dignity remained intact, but I could see the exhaustion etched into the corners of his eyes. He wasn't afraid of her. He was simply tired of what she represented. My grandfather feared not confrontation itself, but what might come after. The spiral into conflict, the quiet humiliation, the kind of structural inconvenience that would force him to defend his simple right to exist in peace. A different flight attendant approached, older, composed and clearly seasoned in handling moments like this. Her presence carried quiet authority, the kind earned through years of experience. Her voice was calm but firm, diplomacy wrapped in steel. "Ma'am," she said, addressing Sarah directly, "I'll need to see your boarding pass." Sarah handed it over with exaggerated reluctance, sighing loudly enough for the entire cabin to bear witness to her supposed suffering. The flight attendant examined it carefully, a pause, a subtle flicker of understanding. Then she handed it back. "Your seat," she said evenly, "is in row 14. Her words weren't a suggestion. They were final. Sarah's head snapped up. "No, that must be a mistake. Check again. I was told I'd been upgraded." "Ma'am," the flight attendant repeated, "your assigned seat is in row 14. There's no record of any upgrade in our system." Sarah's face flushed crimson. "Well, then fix it. Clearly there's been an error. I shouldn't have to sit back there. It's cramped. I have circulation issues. I bruise easily. I need this seat more than he does. You're being unbelievably insensitive, and frankly, discriminatory." The word discriminatory landed heavy in the air, carefully chosen to sting, to manipulate, to turn perception into weapon. She wasn't arguing facts anymore, she was rewriting the story. This wasn't about logic, it was about narrative, and she believed that if her version was the loudest, it would become the truth. But what she didn't realize was that everyone in first class had already seen her behavior long before she pressed record. The older attendant's expression never wavered. "We're not discussing this further. Please take your assigned seat so we can continue boarding and prepare for takeoff." Sarah didn't move. "No," she said simply. One word, cold, final, absolute. And that was when it hit me. She didn't want a seat. She wanted control. She didn't crave comfort. She craved power, attention, validation. The kind that comes from overpowering someone she thought was beneath her. My grandfather shifted slightly, his cane tapping once against the carpet. The sound was faint but grounding. His hands rested in his lap, fingers gently intertwined. He stared forward, not at her, not at the crew, not at the watching passengers. Just forward, as though the only way to endure humiliation was to refuse to acknowledge it. His silence wasn't surrender. It was grace. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. Peace had failed. Not because it was wrong, but because it was never an option she was willing to honor. This wasn't a conversation anymore. It was a power struggle, and we were done playing by her rules. I turned slightly toward a man seated 2 rows behind us. His phone was already raised, recording not twisted angles or selective edits, but the truth exactly as it was. He met my gaze and gave a single nod. Across the aisle, another passenger arched a brow in silent question. "Do you want me to step in?" Not yet, I thought. Not while the tension still had shape. I leaned back in my seat and spoke calmly, loud enough for Sarah and the rest of the cabin to hear. "Okay," I said. "If you'd like to continue, we'll document everything. Full context. Every word, every witness. Then we'll send it to customer relations. If you're right, you'll have nothing to worry about." For the first time, her confidence cracked. Just a flicker, but enough. She realized that attention alone might not protect her anymore. The cabin fell into stillness, the kind that feels like the world holding its breath before something shifts. Sarah stiffened, her shoulders squaring, the floral pattern of her dress pulling tight as she tried to reclaim her fading control. Her phone wavered slightly in her hand. Her eyes darted from face to face, searching for support, for a nod, a whisper, a single look of agreement, but no one moved. The silence that met her wasn't supportive, it was watchful, and through it all my grandfather sat perfectly still. His hands folded neatly in his lap, his breathing calm. He was the only one untouched by the chaos. A quiet dignity radiated from him, not as an act, not as defiance, but as truth. Simply and profoundly who he was. His calm wasn't weakness. It came from a lifetime of surviving harder moments than this. Yet behind his eyes I could still see the quiet shadow of exhaustion, of being forced to defend something he had already earned. paid for and deserved. A senior flight supervisor soon appeared, moving with the composed confidence of someone who had seen every kind of conflict before. Her uniform was crisp, her steps steady, and her expression revealed no confusion, only control. "Ma'am," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I understand there's been a disagreement about seating." Sarah immediately straightened, seizing the moment like a lifeline. "Yes, thank you. Finally, someone who can handle this. They're in my seat. I was told I'd be upgraded. He shouldn't even be here. He needs medical assistance, not first class." There must be some mistake. The supervisor didn't flinch. She simply extended her hand. "May I see your boarding pass, please?" Sarah handed it over reluctantly, gripping it as if it were a weapon she wasn't ready to surrender. Her smile was forced, her tone brittle. The supervisor examined the pass carefully, eyes steady, voice unwavering. "This ticket is for row 14. That's an economy. There's no record of an upgrade or seat reassignment." Sarah blinked rapidly, shaking her head as if denial alone could change the truth. "No, that's not right. I have priority status. I always get upgraded. You should move him." She pointed straight at my grandfather, her gesture sharp, invasive, like he was an obstacle instead of a person. "He's too old to travel up here safely. That's a liability for the airline." My grandfather lifted his eyes, calm and steady. There was no anger in them, only a quiet disappointment, a kind of sadness that said more than words ever could. The supervisor's voice remained composed but grew firmer. "We don't move passengers based on age or anyone's assumptions. He's seated exactly where his ticket says he should be. You are not." Sarah inhaled sharply, ready to argue again, but before she could, a man 2 rows behind leaned forward, his phone still recording. His voice was calm but clear. "I recorded the whole thing, including when she tried to remove his luggage and claimed the seat was hers. I can share it with the airline if needed." The woman across the aisle, the one pretending to read earlier, lowered her magazine. "Same here. I saw everything." The supervisor took a brief look around. With witnesses now speaking up, her certainty solidified. The decision was final. Sarah's confidence cracked. "Are you seriously taking their side? I fly with this airline all the time. I'm a loyal customer. I pay for premium service." The supervisor didn't waver. "Ma'am, attempting to take another passenger's seat violates airline policy. Continuing to disrupt boarding can result in removal from the flight." The word removal landed heavy in the air. The entire cabin went silent. Sarah froze, not in fear but disbelief. This wasn't how things usually went for her. She wasn't used to hearing no. "You can't be serious," she stammered. "I paid for my ticket." "You can't just—" "You'll be rebooked on a later flight," the supervisor interrupted gently. "If you refuse, airport security will escort you off the plane. The choice is yours." Around us, passengers didn't cheer. They didn't gloat. They simply watched, a quiet, collective understanding passing between them. For once, entitlement had met accountability. It wasn't about winning. It was about fairness, justice without the need for spectacle. Sarah's gaze darted around the cabin, desperate for support, for anyone to take her side, to say she was right. But no one did. Even her phone was lowered now, her recording useless without the audience she depended on to twist the truth. "This is unbelievable," she whispered, her voice cracking, not from sympathy but humiliation. "This is ridiculous. I'm the victim here. This is discrimination against people who travel frequently. You don't understand how this works." The supervisor didn't respond with anger. She simply gestured toward the aisle. "Ma'am, please gather your belongings." Silence followed, slow, heavy, final. Sarah's movements had lost their confidence. Her hands trembled as she reached for her bag in the overhead compartment. When it slipped slightly, a nearby passenger instinctively reached out to help. She recoiled as if kindness itself was an insult. Her footsteps down the aisle weren't loud, but their echo would linger. The cabin door closed behind her with a quiet finality that didn't need words. Once she was gone, the air seemed to exhale. The tension dissolved. Conversations resumed in soft tones. A few passengers glanced toward my grandfather, not with pity but with quiet respect. A nod here, a gentle smile there. Small gestures that carried meaning. The supervisor turned to him, her tone now warmer, more personal. "Sir, on behalf of the crew, I apologize for the disturbance. If there's anything we can do to make your flight more comfortable, please let us know." My grandfather inclined his head slightly. "Thank you," he said, simple, sincere. A flight attendant brought extra pillows and adjusted his seat. The gesture was small, but the care behind it carried weight. As the plane began its slow taxi toward the runway, I looked at my grandfather. The shadow that had lingered in his eyes was gone. What remained was quiet strength, a sense of balance restored. I leaned back in my seat as the engines roared softly beneath us. The conflict hadn't ended with shouting or punishment. It had ended with truth, seen clearly, without drama, without spectacle. This wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity being returned to where it belonged. And as the plane lifted into the sky, leaving the ground and all its noise behind, I felt something deeper than relief. Peace. Earned, not given.